welcome back to the Kings of CONCACAF. I'm your host, Nate, and today we're going to be talking about the 17 potential host cities for the United States, Canada, Mexico 2026 World Cup. So I easily could make this video an hour long and explain in depth, in detail, why I think each city should be or should not be as a host city, but I will try to make this as brief as possible for all of you guys listening. So that being said, I'm going to, take my little notebook where I put all of my notes on which cities deserve the bids, and I will begin by naming all 17 of the cities, and then break them down on which I think will get the bid and which will not get the bid. So starting off, I say there is Boston, New York, Baltimore, Washington, Cincinnati, Nashville, Atlanta, Orlando, Miami, Kansas City, Dallas, Houston, Denver, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle. So I'm going to go from the bottom of my list to the top of my list. So these are not necessarily what I think. If FIFA were to come out with a list, what they would say, this is what I think is best in terms of a lot of different factors, whether that be, can they handle this amount? Can the city handle this amount of people? How's their soccer culture? Have they hosted big events before? All those factors. So finally, we're going to start with the worst potential city of the 17 to be nominated, and that would be Baltimore. I don't think I'm going to get too much pushback, except if you live in Baltimore. The soccer culture is almost non-existent. At the youth levels, it's not that bad, but there's no professional team, and their closest is DC United, and they have the record low in terms of attendance in the MLS. So I don't think there's much of an argument for them. Also, it's not a very safe city. So that's kind of all that I have to say about Baltimore. Orlando at 16. And many of you may be shocked because Orlando has good facilities and they have, they're right by Walt Disney World. So people may be able to go to Disney World as well when they're there. Some of those things, soccer culture is good. They can handle this many people. But I think it has a worse soccer culture and very similar in every other aspect as Miami. And I don't think they're going to have both of those cities from Florida. I think they will only pick one. 15, Nashville. So Nashville for me is similar to Baltimore, as their soccer culture is definitely better than Baltimore because they have an MLS team, but I don't think it's very good in the fact that Nashville's attendance isn't great. When you think about the best culture for soccer in the United States, Nashville is nowhere near the top of that list. I think they could handle, the World Cup and how many people that brings, but I don't think they could do it very easily. I think they would need to build stuff and bring some more things in. So there's that. 14 is Cincinnati. And this is really a shame because Cincinnati's soccer culture is as good as anyone, as any of the cities on here, but they cannot handle a World Cup. They would have to build more, basically everything. Their city is very small. I don't even know if it's top 30 in the United States. I'm pretty sure it's not even the top 30 for cities in the United States. It's a small city, so they would not be able to handle it. But I will say they're definitely better than the bottom three because their soccer culture is so good. And it's a shame that is not a bigger city. We're going to then move on to Houston. Houston could handle it, easily could handle it. Their city is big. They have a big airport. Their soccer culture, though, is not that great. Houston Dynamo is not a big club. They don't necessarily bring in a lot of fans. I'm an avid watcher of the MLS, and I cannot name one player on the Houston Dynamo. And that's saying something because I do watch it enough that I should know, a player from each team. And I can pretty confidently say that I could name one for every other team, I think maybe besides the Houston Dynamo. So And also, I think that Dallas is a much better suitor for a city in Texas, but there is a chance they could potentially host because of the fact that FIFA in the past have granted two cities close together in order to create a kind of hub for teams so they don't have to travel quite as far if they want to be playing in Dallas and then were to play in Houston. But that's the only reason I could see Houston getting it over another city above. 12 is Denver. Denver is same with Houston. They could handle it. They've hosted, things before. They have a beautiful stadium, nice towns around. There's, tourist things to do. Obviously the Rockies are right there. So, there's lots to do in Denver. Soccer culture is not good. I think they're the third worst team, if I'm remembering my research correctly. They're the third worst team when it comes to attendance in the MLS. Their team is good, and they still don't bring really fans out, which is definitely a negative for them. And that's why I believe they're not going to get a bid. I will say there is a potential they do get a bid in the sense that there'll be a pretty big gap in between Texas and California, where there'd be no cities in those states to the west of Texas before you hit California. So that's a potential why Denver I could see maybe getting a bid, but I don't think they will. So now we have reached the 11th spot, and the 11th spot is a potential for a city. So originally FIFA had announced that United States would get 10 cities that would host World Cup games. But after that, the third city in Canada, Montreal, had dropped out. So now there's an extra city that needs to be named for a host city. FIFA hasn't really come out and said who that's going to be, but it seems like it's going to be a city from the United States rather than a city from Canada or Mexico. I know Vancouver had lobbied for that potential host city, but there has been nothing about Vancouver on any of the FIFA shortlist for host city. So I'm assuming, as many people are online, that the 11th and extra city will go to the United States rather than the other two countries. So that is why I'm doing top 11 rather than top 10. And that 11th city is Washington, D.C. And the only positive, basically, I mean, that's a stretch, but the only positive, and I'm saying for Washington, D.C., is that it is in the country's capital. FedEx Field is not a nice field. It's in Washington, D.C., not very close to this. It's not close to the city, so people would have to travel into the city to go to tourist type things. It's not a very big city. Also, there's a security threat with being lots of the, obviously government buildings in that city. So, there's threats for people to do, bad things to those government buildings, White House, Capitol building, all those things. So that's also a negative. But I will say Joe Biden in the past, obviously the president of the United States, has lobbied for Washington, D.C. to, have a bid to host, the World Cup. So it's kind of basically up to him. I mean, obviously, if he wants it or not, he's potentially the most powerful man in the world. So I think if anyone can basically get a city to host, it definitely would be Joe Biden. So if he wants it bad enough, I'm sure he could make it happen. 10, Kansas City. So Kansas City's infrastructure is not fantastic, but I will say their soccer culture is great. After the Gold Cup in the summer, they hosted a couple games. The atmosphere was great. And I will say with the atmosphere, they're definitely working to do better. They are building new railways. They are adding new highways in Kansas City to make sure that if the World Cup were to happen, transportation would be much easier. Another plus for them is that their field is grass, and according to FIFA's regulations, that all fields need to be grass. So they would not have to spend that extra potentially millions of dollars to change their field to grass. Then we have 9, San Francisco. So for those, San Francisco might be surprised because it is a California city. Their population is big. They have an okay soccer culture, but the reason why I have San Francisco lower is because of the fact that their soccer culture is not very good. The San Jose Earthquakes are the smallest market team in the MLS, and they do not bring out fans. I think the one plus that San Francisco, well, there's multiple pluses, but the biggest plus that San Francisco has is that they are home to like arguably the most wealthy area in the United States. Lots of these Fortune 500 companies have lobbied and are going to continue to lobby for San Francisco to host, / the Bay Area to host the World Cup in order to bring more revenue in for these companies in order for them to grow. 8 is Boston. Boston is definitely at an advantage. I think I would even argue that they're a lock for a host city because of Robert Kraft. Robert Kraft is obviously a very influential member in American sports as a whole, but he also was a part of the committee to get the bid for the United States, Mexico, and Canada to host the 2026 World Cup, and was obviously officially granted that bid. He's also good friends with the ex United States Soccer Federation head, whose name is Sunil Gulati, who he's friends with, who's now on the selection committee for FIFA, who is going to decide who gets the cities. But I will say that Gillette Stadium is not in a great place. It's kind of far away from Boston. So same with Washington, D.C. People are going to have to go in and out of the city to get back to Foxborough, Massachusetts, where Gillette is located. But I will say, because of Robert Kraft, they're almost a lock for them to host, I should say. Number 7 is Philadelphia. So Philadelphia, although it is a big city, it's not huge. But they definitely can handle, amount of people that are going to be there. They've hosted an NFL draft. They've hosted the Pope. They've hosted other big events where there's been millions of people in their city. So they definitely can handle it. They are the 3rd largest media, city, media market behind New York and Los Angeles. So that definitely helps them. That is because Comcast. So Comcast has paid FIFA over $1 billion, or almost $1 billion over the last 10 years when it comes to FIFA rights and TV rights and stuff like that. So they have a good relationship with FIFA. So Comcast is definitely going to help Philly in order to get their bid accepted for hosting the 2026 World Cup, at least a couple of games. Also, something with Philadelphia is that they have agreed with FIFA to add more training facilities in FDR Park, which is located right near Lincoln Financial Field, if they were to get their bid accepted. That's definitely a plus for them for staying flexible with FIFA. And also, FIFA came out and said that they were really impressed with Philadelphia and how much they were able to lobby as the committee, but also with the people of Philadelphia and soccer fans in general in Philadelphia. 6 is New York. So New York is obviously the biggest city in America, and they definitely can handle it. It's easily, the biggest media city, media market. So they can handle it. They're going to bring millions of people in to the games. So I think that I know that it'll be no issue to host in New York. But the reason that they're this low on the list is because of the fact that they are not huge when it comes to soccer. The New York Red Bulls is a big deal, but I think in general they're not very great when it comes to their soccer culture. Their futsal culture is okay in the city, but it's definitely not at the levels of these other top 5 cities that I'm about to name. So 5 is Dallas. Dallas is definitely great because of their huge stadium. It offers over 95,000 people that could be at the game. So it's definitely probably the top city for the World Cup final. Them in New York, I would say, because obviously New York is home to it's a hub for just about everything. So that definitely helps them. But Dallas is the biggest stadium by nearly 10,000, I believe, of the final cities. So that's definitely helping them. Dallas has a state-of-the-art, FC Dallas has a state-of-the-art training facility with 17 fields. So countries that come in are going to have no issue training there at FC Dallas's academy and their training facility. So that will be good in that sense. What else? They have 2 big airports, so getting people in and out will be good. Their infrastructure is definitely there. They've hosted big events, and Jerry Jones is someone that always gets his way. So I think he will definitely make sure that Dallas is a host and AT&T Stadium is a host. Number 4 is Seattle. Seattle is home to fantastic soccer culture. They were probably the best soccer culture for a while, in between the peak of LA Galaxy soccer culture and now Atlanta United, who I believe has the best soccer culture. Seattle is doing things to improve their infrastructure. They are making it better. Railroad system, and it will now be one of the biggest and most complex in the United States. So that will definitely help people get in and out of the city. There are 45,000 hotel rooms in the Seattle city limits. So that definitely is fantastic. That will be plenty of rooms for people to come and stay at. So that's definitely a plus for them. Number 3 is Miami. Miami is a fantastic city for soccer. They have a huge South American population, and it's no secret that soccer in South America is much better than soccer in United States, and it's also obviously more popular in South America. So they are going to definitely fill up the stadiums in Miami and make it a priority to be there. And I think that is what makes it, like I said before, makes it better than Orlando, because of its, deep, rich soccer culture, and its, Latin America, South America culture that is, in place in Miami. So number 2 is Los Angeles, and similar with Miami, it has a pretty big South American, Latin American population. They have a rich soccer culture. Los Angeles has 2 MLS teams. They have a brand new stadium. The infrastructure can easily handle the amount of people that are going to be in and out of Los Angeles and the city. So I think they're a lock for the bid. So number 1 is definitely Atlanta. Atlanta is, I think, potentially and arguably the best city for soccer culture in the United States right now. They average over 50,000 fans per game, which is fantastic for the MLS, and it's over 10,000 more on average than any other MLS team. They're a fast-growing city. They have hosted the national championship for college football. They've hosted the Super Bowl, and they've hosted the MLS Cup, all since their new stadium was built 5 years ago. So they will easily be able to handle it. They'll easily be able to handle it. And they also were given money to improve the already good infrastructure in Atlanta. So that is my complete list. I'm sorry if I was talking very fast. I was trying to get through this video as quickly as possible so you guys don't get bored and leave the video. So I am very thankful for all of you that made it this long and made it this far into the video. I appreciate every last one of you. Thank you so much for listening. And please let me know how you feel about my list, what you would change, what's good, and what you think is really bad about the list. So thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you next time.